What's up, everybody? This is Baka. I'm Frankfurter, that's Magically Average, and today we are going to talk about should manga be accessible in schools. Now, you approached me with this topic kind of just out of the blue, and I really want to
Mm.
hear because we haven't discussed this at all before this episode, and I want to hear
Mhm.
what thoughts you have on this, and like because it is kind of an intriguing brain buster to me because I on one hand could think yeah for this reason, or I can think no for all the other multitude of reasons. So I do want to hear your opinions on this and what like kind of the thought process behind this topic is.
Yeah, I like swinging topics out of nowhere at you just to
Mm-hmm.
keep you on your toeters.
My
So
toe beans.
this one actually stems from a class that I took in undergrad, um, as a part of one of my honors electives, where our textbooks were comics, and the sort of the whole purpose of the course was to explore how we can learn through comic books, but not just basic messages, but deeper like historical events or socio-political events or whatever it might have been. Like there are deeper meanings behind it that you have to sort of like in any book of literature that you read, you sort of decipher through how the author goes about writing the story and how it's presented and you know everyone's gone through that class in high school at some point. And if you've
Right.
gone to college at college where you're just like you get a book and by the time it's over it looks like a fucking coloring book with a bunch of sticky tabs bursting out of it because you're trying to annotate everything and yeah. So I was like, well, I wonder if you could do the same thing with manga, like with Japanese comics, because we've been seeing um more kids getting sort of into reading manga. I know there's a famous content creator, um, and I did not look up their name, and I should have before this, but that's my
All
bad.
good. It happens.
He's on TikTok a lot, and I think he has a YouTube channel. I think he's making his webtoon that's getting um, published somewhere. It
Is
very
this
very.
the bowling one?
I don't think so.
Okay, then never mind.
I
I
don't
don't know who
believe
you're
so.
talking about.
Um, but like very well known person in like the manga community and the anime community. And he donated a whole library of manga to a school for kids to read. And I was like, oh, that's it's awesome. First off, that to do a donation to the library, but specifically for manga, I was like, that's really interesting because like growing up, manga was something that I had to kind of keep on the down low, not just from like students, but from teachers too, because it was anything graphic or anything that they just didn't know about. They're like, probably should have to seize this.
Don't know about that.
Yeah, basically. So it got me thinking, well, now with how it's anime and manga are more trendy, so to speak, and it's becoming more I hate using culturally appropriate because that's not the correct terminology to describe this, but it's becoming more like normative to read manga or watch anime even for younger kids. That why couldn't we try to get more manga into libraries just to have kids read, right? And then extending from there, why using manga, probably starting in higher level education courses to sort of teach in a way, different perspectives of authors around the world, how they've interpreted or they've experienced different events in life and portrayed it through their works. So it's a larger topic, just topical discussion, but I wanted to talk about the idea of making it more
Okay.
accessible for kids to have to kids to read manga. Again, you have to be selective with anything. Like I'm not going to give
Right.
a third grader the Catcher in the Rye or like To Kill a Mockingbird, so I wouldn't give a third grader fucking Berserk or
No?
uh you know even Bleach
Inukai's
or
dog.
something. I hope to God that's not. That's probably on a hentai site if it is written. I don't know if there there is a written version of it.
Oh,
I
I
hope to
wouldn't be
God there isn't.
shocked. I'll do the research
Um,
for you.
you don't need to. Um, but it would be interesting to see if more and more school systems will have manga in their libraries again for students to read, because I mean, I'm coming from a subjective and quite biased viewpoint when it comes to this topic, but just allowing kids the ability to read manga and getting kids to read is sort of just a goal in itself,
Right.
right? So if you're getting kids to read, you don't know how far that can extend into, okay, well, now can we get them, to like they're enjoying reading, they're enjoying these comics, let's see if we can extend that over to, okay, well, now we can read, lighter novel books, and now we can read like, and then maybe they get just interested in literature to begin with. So it, it's not, I don't want it to be something to where people are just, people see it and they're just like, oh, they just want to read comic books all day and be a nerd, and that's bad. It's like, no, it's the purpose is to get kids to read to begin with. But yeah, I mean, can we use manga in situations to talk through some of these, geopolitical topics, socio-political topics, even just social cultural topics too? Probably, because it's a unique perspective from, the viewpoints of a author from Japan, most likely.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was just, it's because when I remember when I took that class in college, it was, people were like, "Are you what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm reading comic books. What about it?" They're like, "Yeah, but what do you do?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what do I do? I read comic books about like historical events to which we interpret and discuss in class. Like, what are you getting? Like, what's the problem?" And I'm like, "It's the same thing if you were reading like a regular book. Like we read one of the famous ones, comic books that we read that is used, to my knowledge, in certain college courses of this, in this area, is a comic called Mouse,
Hmm.
um, where it is just about the Holocaust but portrayed through mice.
Oh.
Um, yeah, like the cover of the book, um, sorry, like trigger warnings or whatever leading up to this real quick. The cover of the book is just a giant swastika and a mouse that
Oh, I
has
know what you're
the
talking
Adolf
about.
Hitler. Yeah, like it's a very like it's very blatant, like this is about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Um, but it's in a comic book.
Yeah.
But we used it to talk through, like, okay, the author is portraying these, characters through mice and different animals and stuff. What connections can we draw this to? And then I was like, well, it's just like I think Animal Farm, which is all about communism, and we kind of started to draw comparisons there and talked about like how during the time you had the fascists and the communists. So it sparked this whole larger debate, and I'm like, that's cool. You got that all from a comic book. Now, can we do that in manga? Can we read Full Metal Alchemist and talk about fascism and government states and different government bodies, and how their actions affect the landscape of not just the nation they're in, but other nations? Like, cool things to discuss.
Yep. So I guess really to just kind of springboard a little bit off of this and just kind of have a discussion around it. I think from a university perspective, I think it would be well worth it for the fact that, I mean, you took a class, so it already exists. I think that it would be well worth it to for different writing classes and different literature classes that are doing research into different,
Yeah, and
different
I'll
different
add
countries and whatnot. I think that it would definitely be worth it. And add what?
I'll add the little thing that it was just strictly an honors kind of thesis class, exploring different mediums of teaching topics such as, the Holocaust, and again, like other historical, political, cultural events. So it wasn't exclusively a literature class.
Right.
Because that's a whole other thing too. But continue with the rest of your points before I
So
tangent off.
yes. So because I had the fortune enough to go to a private school, I'm actually in the dark. And this is going to be a real dumb question, and I promise you, this is because I just don't know. Do public schools have libraries?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Not just for you rich, pompous fucknuts.
I'm
Us poor
I
people also get
motherfucker.
libraries.
I know that there are generalized libraries for your city. I did not know if each public school has their own library in it as well. I am that's
I
anyways,
should say
moving on.
I should not generalize. Most public schools have some library, um, but I can't say for all. I mean I'm in the Detroit metropolitan area, so I there's plenty of inner city schools that might not have the most vast libraries, but I do think there are still some libraries.
So my question is that I know that actual like city libraries do carry manga and they it's free, you can go get it, and they like today you I don't know if you have to reserve them in advance, but I know that majority of libraries out there carry a good selection surprisingly of manga. So I think to answer one point, there is already it's already out there for your public library. As for in the actual school, I don't know for middle schoolers to high schoolers, for the fact that they're not using comics really to study, as more of an like using them as an escape or some form of entertainment. I think that they can get what you got, like a uni student could get out of a class by reading it, by seeing the deeper things and having that discussion. But I think the younger you go, the more it's going to be like, "Ooh, look at this comic book!" Ah, ho, ho. And I know that for the fact that in my private school they had comics. They had like Captain Underpants. They had, for the life of me, while you were talking, I was trying for the life of me to figure out what fucking book I read as a kid that was a comic book at my school library. Cannot remember. It was some weird obscure book that I absolutely loved. But anyways, I know that it was something that I used to read at my school, but it wasn't impactful enough to me that it was like I could write a book report about this, like a fifth grade book report about this. I think that there's an argument to be made about high school and university students. They already have it, that's fine. I think there could be an argument for high schoolers to have it in their libraries, for them to be like, hey, here's some offerings from different countries, because I assume that school libraries now would have books from different countries that are made by
Now,
authors that are
depending on the
foreign.
state you're in, maybe.
Yeah, probably so. I know if you're in the state that I'm in, probably not,
Probably not.
because we're a stupid silly state. But I think depending on what state you're in, they already have it there. And I think, yeah, again, high school, I think you can make a case. I don't think anything before then would be beneficial. I think it would be more of a distraction.
No, and I agree with that. It was more just using manga, because I guess to draw a comparison to what you were talking about, when I was in elementary and middle school, we had the Scholastic Book Fair, and that was always a happy time because I would always get either Captain Underpants or Garfield or some comic book of some kind, because I was reading, my mom had me reading like a book before bed, um and most of the time it was like a novel of some kind. When I was growing up, I read um unfortunate the unfortunate events, a series of unfortunate events. Man, I knew I was going to get the name.
Oh, yeah,
um
I
wonderful
still have all those books.
I do too. Wonderful series by Lemony Snicket. That was fun. That transitioned into reading Harry Potter as those came out too. And I really, really enjoyed reading as a kid. But then, like, the fun time reading was when I could get my hands on like the newest copy of Captain Underpants, or like my dad gave me his old Calvin and Hobbes comics, so I read those. Again, like Garfield was what I would always rent from the library too. So yeah, like growing up as in elementary, middle school, like they were just for funsies. And then, in high school is when started to read them more for, for scholastic purposes, educational purposes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then university was like, oh, what if you melded the two? What if you reid them for educational purposes to stretch the bounds of your mind and kind of make you think deeper about what the author's truly writing about. But you can also enjoy it because it's interesting, it's fun, and it's still a comic. So that's sort of the mindset that I have with manga. It's like, can that formula sort of translate over to manga, where it's like elementary and middle school, you're just entertained. This is just to get them introduced. This is just to try to see if they're gonna get them to read. Because again, no kid is the exact same, but who knows how many kids might pick up a manga. Let's say something easy for the kids to read, like Naruto or something. I don't know,
Right.
or One Piece, right? There's a bajillion of those. That's easy. Just stack the shelves. Um, and they start reading it and they're like, hey, reading's kind of fun. I like the fact that there's pictures, there's action. It's just getting them to read a book, and then just having them get interested in reading is a success in itself. Then transition into high school to be like, okay, let's take this medium, these Japanese comics, and let's kind of look at them more from an educational side and read it for that purpose,
Right.
right? Because you can do that with a good amount of series, and it's not stretching the realm of anything, right? You can even pick up Demon Slayer and just talk about, for a history class, talk about the time period that it's set in, like what was going on in that era of Japan, in which this is why it's set, and these are the locations, and yada yada yada. Again, I mentioned Full Metal Alchemist. That's a really easy one to pick up and just go, fascism,
Mm-hmm.
have your way with it. So it seems like there's a larger use for manga than just just for the hobby side. And I feel like it would be a great way for schools to, again, entice younger audiences to just be interested in reading and enjoy it, and then later on to sort of meld them and be like, hey, that really cool series you like, let's discuss it more in depth, and truly pick out the messages that are being sent by the author. Like, what are they trying to convey here? What are they trying to bring across to readers, not just in on the panels, right? What they're physically like drawing and writing, but beyond that, like, is there anything else that they're trying to get across to readers? I think that's like the really cool area that could get students even more and more interested in it. And then, then you have a whole new generation of kids that can say, growing up, like, I grew up reading the big three. I grew up reading Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, even though they came out 25 years before I was born or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that to me seems like it would be sort of the next step, the next evolution of like where manga and this medium can go in, specifically in the United States education system.
Yeah. I think that there are people who could and will, there are kids out there that I think will get a lot out of it and can get a lot out of it, but I do think that there will be, even introducing it in, and as a young, it will get them into reading, but I think it'll be more of a distraction to them than anything else. And
But that's fine. That's fine. It it I I am not in tune with the younger generation, mostly because I'm a 28-year-old man who's married that doesn't have kids, so it's probably a good thing that I'm not,
yeah,
stalking
probably.
an elementary school. Yeah. So, positives there. But it, in my mind, if it's a distraction to them, that's great. I don't want to sound like I'm a boomer parent or anything, but like, it's good for kids to play video games with their friends, because it is a act of like interacting socially, even though it's through, virtually. It is still gratifying for kids to have that connection, but it's also gratifying for kids to go outside and hang out with friends at school too, right?
Yeah.
It's also fine to have distractions. It's fine for kids to have a hobby, to play video games, to play a sport, to read. Like, those are all good things. So it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't matter if they're reading. If a 5-year-old kid wants to pick up and read Shakespeare, go for it, little dude. But if you would rather pick up and read volume 1 of One Piece, that's your decision too. That's great. Just getting them to the point of wanting to go, "Hey, can I get another one of these? Can I read more? Is there more of this out there?" Just having them reach that point, you've already accomplished so much, so many goals because you've got them to read, you've got them interested, and you got them wanting more. And that's hard. Like I feel like reading is getting kids to read is getting harder and harder because there are so many other things out there for kids to be doing. Kids have a bajillion different types of video games. Like I know for me, it was a combination of like I played hockey, but I also played video games. I also played with my friends outside. I also read and was nerdy and collected Pokemon cards too. And like I had that side to me as well. Like I sort of did the gambit, but for a lot of kids, it's like kind of one. It's like only a couple of things. Maybe you're only interested in video games and not really interested in school, or maybe you're just the sports kid, not interested in school. But if you can get into reading, then who knows what can come after that. So just that initial step is sort of the key place for me.
True, but I do have some hard thoughts into, or not hard thoughts. I do have some skeptical. Yeah, I'll give you. I have skeptical thoughts of reading manga and converting them into actual readers with books without pictures. Because, like, while manga is a great substitution for stories and storytelling, I think that there's a lot to be said about actually reading books without pictures. Like you bring up To Kill a Mockingbird and everything else. I think that for me, I know me personally, I used to read comics as a kid and then I read books, but after reading fantasy books and such and having to be forced to read books over the summer for summer reading, I think that being that forced to read and then just having to read books that that weren't comics or weren't in my interests, I think that kind of turned me off to reading altogether. Because while I can read manga, I can read 4 volumes or whatever in a few hours and just be fine with it. If I try to read an actual book with no pictures, which I've tried doing pretty recently, I fall asleep every fucking time, no matter how riveting the fucking book is.
God, you're an old
man. I find it the skepticism in my heart says, like, how will this actually convert them into actual readers? Like, I say actual readers as in non-comics, non-manga.
Again, maybe I'm just looking at small victories and saying job well done.
Pat on the back.
Yeah, so to what you're saying about like reading, being assigned to read, being told what to read. I always hated that as a kid. Like I hated that through high school. I did not enjoy the fact that I was being told, "Hey, you have to read this thing and then come back and tell me what it says." I would rather you say, "Hey, topic is this, find a book that has a message related to this, read it, come back, tell me what it was." That seems more in line with sort of the freedom that I get from picking and choosing what I want to read, right?
Yeah.
So
and I will say real quick, like my sister was a teacher in Houston, no longer anymore, and she would take
no longer your sister,
no longer my sister, no longer a teacher.
Yeah.
No longer a teacher. She would bring in her personal like manga collection. Like she would bring in specific series for her class to read on breaks and whatnot. And she kind of found out, to the detriment to herself, that kids would just stay in her classrooms during lunch and everything to read comics. Which it's not saying that comics won't get them into reading. Like they'll read comics. It's a matter of how do we get them to read more than comics to expand on that.
But that's kind good. Of expand. That's but I guess again, small victories here. Like I'm not saying like you read manga and then bada bing bada boom, you read like 5 novels a week and you become the smartest human known to man.
Oh no, he's addicted to books. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, that's not what I'm here. That's not what I'm saying here. All I want is for kids to want to pick up a book. Not because they're being told to, not because it's assigned, not because they have to write a research paper on it, but because they want to pick up a book and read it, no matter what it is. Okay? And if it starts as manga, that's great. And if it continues to just be manga, that's fine, right? Because you're at least have some escape from the here's what you have to read to here's what I want to read. Because what I don't want to have happen is for kids to go through school, which it seems like it is more and more these days, where kids go through school and they fucking hate reading because they're always being told, hey, you gotta read this book. This is your summer book assignment. You gotta write a research paper on it. Oh, guess what? 2 more books coming down the way. Get ready to have a test on these. And then you loathe reading. Like that was my whole fear after I graduated law school because I had to read so much throughout the week. Every single day, it was 50 to 75 pages of legal text, like case studies and understanding law and trying to interpret what the fuck the old English judges are fucking talking about
And
because
then
it's not English. It's some alien language that they made up because they were either high on coke or drunk or both and just fucking loony bins in their judge robes and curly wigs and gavels. Just that I was like I don't want to read ever again. I don't even want to see a fucking book. But manga was my one escape from reality because and newsflash, spoiler alert folks, it's still reading. Like I still was reading, but I found the one thing that made reading enjoyable to me, and that was manga. And I still do read from time to time. It's not as much as I used to as a kid, but it's because it's more manga right now. That's just my happy escape. And that's fine,
yeah,
right? Because I'm
yeah.
still reading. I'm still interested in literature. And again, sorry to burst everyone's bubbles, don't want to make your heads explode, but manga is still literature. Comics are literature. Just because they have pictures and just because they turn the opposite way of normal Western United States books, English books do, doesn't mean that they're not literature. It is still literature. So, to the original point that I was making, if a kid goes to the library and sees this really interesting spine and goes, "Huh, Naruto. That sounds like a really weird word that I don't know what it means. I'm going to pick this up." And then goes, "Whoa, you flip the pages backwards. That's odd. Oh my gosh, it has pictures in it." And they start reading it. Boom. That's it. It's check mark success. You did it. I
So
want kids to get into the library reading, interested in books, and manga's in a great spot. Again, who knows where it's going to spiral? Will it spiral into the kid starts reading the fucking Sun Tzu's Art of War? Probably not. But could they end up just enjoying books in the future? Yeah, a good chance because you get them interested at a young age through a medium that is enjoyable to them and not forced down their throats through the school curriculum. You don't want to ruin something in them. That's why I fucking hate math. Math was never made fun for me.
that was made
No
fun for
one,
me, and I loved it.
yeah, because you are fucking weird, and we've already talked about the fact that you're
I'm
weird, so
just
we're not
weird.
even gonna
It's
go
fine.
deep into it.
I've got
But
I've
like,
I've got two
but
questions for you then, just to
well,
kind
but
of put
hang
it.
on, hang on. I just want to wrap up my one
Uh,
point. If they made math fun, which some video games tried to, like Putt Putt, and I think a couple
don't
other
you
games
don't you fucking
tried to
dare
make.
talk shit about
No, no,
Putt
no.
Putt,
I
Spy
love Putt
Fox,
Putt.
or
I
Freddy the
love Putt Putt.
goddamn fucking
Freddy the
fish,
Goldfish. Yeah, I loved him. There was another one,
Pajama
PJ.
Sam.
Yeah, Pajama Sam. They try to make that stuff fun. They try to make math fun. They try to make like other subjects in school fun, and they did a good job with it. But beyond that, when I was getting into middle school and high school, sure, I was good at math, but I fucking hated it. I didn't like it. It was dumb to me. because I didn't have anything outside of it to escape to be like, oh man, actually, you know what? Math is kind of cool. I like this aspect of it. This is really interesting to me. No point did I ever want to go, I really want to figure out what those like fucking beads on the old the beads on the wire do. Like that's how did they use that for math before? What the fuck is that thing called?
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the actual fucking name of it.
I used to know it, but well, yeah, but you see what I mean? Like it makes something fun for kids by just giving them the access to it. Like
so
again, will they end up reading forever? Who knows? But you just got to get them interested from the start.
so my two questions to you, and
Oh God.
one is just a fun one, and then the
Okay.
other is like, if you were to actually do this, what would you do? First one, what was the worst assigned book that you had to ever read for summer reading?
The Cage.
The Cage.
It's a book that no one probably knows. I don't think it's really technically a book. It's just a short story. It is. It was sort of our. I quick backstory. I went into a very difficult high school. Most students around the United States know what AP courses are. They're like the higher level courses. I took IB courses, which are like the higher of the higher level courses. It's international baccalaureate courses. So like it was like the honors of the honors school. So it was it was tough high school. I hated my life for like 4 years. Um, but like our first assignment as freshmen in our English course was to read this short story and to annotate it and come back with like a synopsis basically of what its meaning is. And our teacher told us day one, like, so this is your first assignment. FYI, the class average is normally like a D.
Yay.
Have fun. And I'm like, what? Love her to death though. She was one of my favorite teachers in high school. But yeah, that one sucked.
So for me, I can't, because I've tried to push them out of my brain as much as possible. It either has to be The Hatchet by Gary Paulson, or I think it's called The Giver.
Ooh, The Giver was a good one though, I thought.
Yeah, it was
I
The
like The
Giver.
Giver.
No, I fucking hated that book. That book was a piece of shit.
Oh, again, you just don't like reading because you're
I
telling me you
don't.
like numbers
Yeah,
instead.
fuck you too.
Fucking weird.
Okay. Anyways,
All right, what's
was
your
not born
serious
here.
question?
The other serious question. So, since you have these grandiose thoughts of like getting kids into manga, would get them into reading, what series would you put in a school library that you would try to get kids to read to get them into reading?
So I would want a balance of things that are to some level. I mean, it has to all be appropriate, right? I'm not going to
Yeah.
throw in fucking My Dress Up Darling into like elementary
No.
schools and have them be like, you can dress up as people, and what are those big jiggly things? Um, I would probably, to me, I think like Naruto and One Piece are probably cool ones. Bleach might be a little too intense.
Yeah.
Naruto might be a little bit intense too, but I think One Piece is probably a safe one. And then, honestly, things like My Hero is fine. Teaching kids
There's
how
some
to.
questionable outfits in it, but yeah.
Yeah, there's questionable stuff. There's questionable stuff in everything. Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of vetting, and that's like it. Trust me, with everything that's going on in the world, if one were to bring manga in, it would be like the next hot topic as opposed to addressing like the actual serious issues. So it's not gonna this is not something on the chopping block for any time soon. But yeah, I don't know. I would need to really look through and figure it out. There's nothing coming to mind. Everything that comes to mind right now to me is just smut. So
You
probably can't.
dirty boy, you.
Well, not smut, but I'm like, what slice of life stuff? What easygoing stuff? Teaching about friendship and how to navigate schools, and I'm like,
Catch
no,
These
no, not that.
Hands isn't terrible.
Uh, well, no, it would get flagged because it's lesbian.
Yeah, I know, but it's not a bad. It's
No, it's not a bad one.
it even
Kubo,
isn't even that
Kubo,
like
Kubo Will Let Me Be Invisible would be kind of funny one.
Komi Can't Communicate.
Homie Can't Communicate would be a really good one.
I think for me, I think a good blend of action, comedy, and slice of life, I think would be
City. City would be a good one too.
which one?
City.
I don't know. Oh, I know of City. I haven't read it. I think Toilet Bone Hanako. I think that might be a good one.
Yeah,
because
that would
it's
be an
got some
interesting
good.
one.
It's childlike in its drawings and its art because it is chibi esque. I
Hmm.
think it's got a decent amount of action in it to keep the kids, the kind of male audience into it. But it's also got like the little bit of romance for, the people who like romance and all that. And it's got some mystery and intrigue with all the different mysteries of the school. So I think
Yeah,
Toilet Bound Hanako would be a good one. But I think Slice of Life, Komi would be a pretty decent one. Yeah,
and it this is gonna elongate the conversation, so I won't go too far into it. But it also kind of gives to what you were saying before about how, like, reading something that has pictures in it is a lot different than reading just words and having to kind of imagine things, which to me as a kid, I always enjoyed that. I always liked when I was reading something, painting the picture in my mind of like the scenery and like what was happening between the
yeah.
characters, and like, you kind of through the artist's imagery kind of create them in your mind, and develop these personalities too as the story goes along. Manga is much different because it's kind of all laid out there for you. But to me, as a kid, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe some people would argue like, well, you're not expanding their imagination because you're just showing them pictures, and it's like, fine, but it is cool for, like, let's say a kid that might not be getting along with people well and having a hard time finding friends, like for one reason or another. Komi Can't Communicate is a great example of a student that everyone adores, but she can't make friends because she has a, like, talking disorder, basically. Like, she can't talk to anyone,
She gets
right? She has
extreme stage fright essentially.
yeah, she has extreme anxiety, and that's something that, written down in a novel. You can get that across, but it's a lot different seeing it drawn out in front of you, and like seeing the characters' expressions and reactions and emotions played out. Whereas a kid, you can kind of be like, oh, I can, that's kind of like me, like, huh, I can relate to this character. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. It's things like that. Like, it's you don't get that a lot, and I'm not up to date on my current kids books that are coming out. Um, I know Diarrhea Wimpy Kid was like the book for a while for my younger brother, when he was in like middle school and
the
into high
guy
school.
the guy who does Captain Underpants does a lot of stuff. Like he is the number one selling comic book writer of, like, not all time, but like every year consistently. He
That
does
doesn't
like
surprise me.
Dog Cop and Cat whatever.
Yeah, that
But
doesn't surprise me. But like,
what is his name though? Holy shit.
but yeah, like, just I'm sure that just having another couple options up there would not hurt the library at
Dave
all.
Pilkey.
Cool. That name doesn't matter to me. The only name that I care about in terms of authors are Lemony Snicket and Jonathan Rand, because Jonathan Rand is from my home state of Michigan, and he wrote the Michigan and American Chiller books
You
that
know
are
that,
incredible.
just making sure, you know that Lemony Snicket's not his actual name, right?
I know Lemony Snicket's not his actual name because I got a book that was written by his actual name. Lemony Snicket is his pen name. I know
Daniel
that. But
Handler.
yes.
Anyways,
Thank you. Today is the day that Frank learned about pen names.
today's the day that Tyler decides he's gonna fucking murder me.
That day was decided long ago. But
Yeah.
yeah, to wrap up all my thoughts though, I think it's an interesting area to explore. I think that if the objective is to get kids to learn to read or just to want to read at a young age, you can do it through a medium that is exciting to them, and I think manga is one of those. And then again, it's an evolution as it later on you can start using them for educational purposes, talking about whatever sort of topic you want to, because again, spoiler alert, don't want to freak anyone out here. There's a fuck ton of manga out there. I'm sure
What?
there's something for everything. Yeah, I know. It's mind-boggling.
Shocking.
Yeah. So it's just it to me. If we're wanting to hit a couple of different objectives with getting kids interested in reading, finding more reading, just like different mediums within literature that are not just like novels or coloring books,
Yeah.
as most boomers assume. You either got your books with words or your books with pictures. That's about it. Um, uh, if you're just doing those two, and then finding educational purposes and ways to use them to get kids to think more than just what's written out, it again, look to manga. There's a lot of different case studies, I'm sure, about how, I mean, my college course included, about how comic books can and should be used for educational purposes, and manga should be included in that area.
And with that, thank you all for joining us this week. Greatly appreciate it. We will be back next week with a brand new episode with a brand new topic. So until next time, Spark Triumph. We will see you then.